I hate it when she's disappointed in me. One thing for me as a man, and I think most men can relate to this, is we've done so many things in our life to try to please her, please our family, in service of our own selves, of course, right? That's at least what we tell ourselves. But when she's disappointed, it's almost as though we can't stand it. We want to avoid her disappointment at any cost, really. And that's the motto of the nice guy. I think if I do everything perfectly, then she's always going to be happy with me. I'll have a perfect life. She'll never be disappointed with me. And so obviously, right, if she's disappointed, I've done something wrong. Well, that's not correct. That's not true. And as we do this work as men, as we continue down the path of this journey, we are told that by a coach, we're told that by a video or the books that we read, and how to bring that really into our bones, into our heart, into our soul, and into our belief is a challenge. And I want to ask you, gentlemen, here tonight, how you face that, how you steer the ship of your own joy, even when she's disappointed in you. Welcome to this man-to-man call, gentlemen, with myself, Jeff Allen. I believe in freedom to live a life and relationship with passion, not scraps from the table, right? Not to be relegated to limbo land for the rest of our lives. Let's say if she's not sure about us or is not in love with us right now. Well, what do we do with that? We want the freedom to be confident within ourselves no matter what, and the freedom to make the most important promises to ourselves, even when she's disappointed. And whether she collapses inwardly, most women either one of two things. They collapse inwardly, where it's more quiet, reserved, they remove themselves or avoidant, you could say, or they're more in your face about it, potentially more explosive, or this woman who's giving you the two thumbs down, whether she literally does that or whether she uses even very harsh words to shame you or disapprove of you. I know that all quotes on the internet are either attributed to Abraham Lincoln or Albert Einstein. And so here's one that Abraham Lincoln said: most folks are as happy as they make up their mind to be. If we don't believe we actually can be happy at the same time that she's disappointed in us, well, then of course we're never going to be happy if she's disappointed. Of course, we're always going to look outside of ourselves to gauge how happy I should be based off of everyone outside of me. And that's the wrong way to look at it, of course. And how to learn that, how to practice that is what I want to talk with you guys here now. So how, in your estimation and your practice, in your belief, how can you still be joyous even if a woman is unhappy with you? How can you do that?
Well, I think you've got to learn to just not worry about other people's judgment of you, unless he's sitting behind a bench and got a gavel and says guilty. But apart from that, you can't live your life based on others' acknowledgement or opinion of you, because you don't know their life and you don't know their value system. You've got to have your own value system. And I suppose I've got to the stage with a lot of reflection that this opinion of me doesn't really matter, because it's her opinion and her life in the moment. And after a lot of, I look back on all the arguments we have, and what was I trying to do in the argument? Prove her wrong. Well, or why did the argument matter? And a lot of it was shame projection and me reacting to it, or her bringing up past hurts, which I couldn't even fucking remember. So to me, you learn to be comfortable in yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. That's what other people call experience. So I've got a lot of experience. Yeah. So the older you get, the more other people. Well, I don't know. When you're younger and you're striving and all that sort of shit, you're looking for affirmation from your bosses or whatever, because you want to move ahead and all that sort of stuff. And it depends. Like, I've spoken of my background and my parents' background and all that. And you get a value system placed on you, which on reflection may not be valid. It's their value system based on their experience, which I've come through a lot worse at times than you. For my parents, the depression and the war and stuff like that. So you go, well, hold a sec. They had a value system that allowed them to survive in that period of time and with its pressures and its own values. But the world's moved on.
The world's moved on. It's almost as though she's moved on, or the world has shifted underneath our feet sometimes. And So what's the most challenging situation you've seen recently where someone you cared about was disappointed in you?
I haven't seen a lot of people disappointed in me recently, or maybe I don't care, so I didn't notice. Nothing comes to mind. I'm a man of my word, and if I say I'm going to do something, I do something. Nothing comes to mind over the last little while, to be honest, Jeff, because I would challenge it in the moment. I would go, I wouldn't dwell on it. I would challenge it in the moment. That's just me being me. I haven't got time to, well, haven't got time. I just, again, if there's an issue, speak to it now, get it resolved now so you can move forward.
And so by challenge, I'm curious, by challenge in the moment, you mean to try to hash it out with the person is the intent.
Yeah.
What if they're not interested in talking with you? What if they're disappointed and it's a stranger, I suppose you don't care? Or if it's a family member that doesn't want to talk about it and they walk off. Sounds as though you have a different approach to it. You can't control them. Yeah, what else would you add to that?
Well, I had a recent instance where my twin brother was yelling and carrying on at me, so I just let him do that, and he wouldn't let me respond. So I knew in the moment I wasn't going to respond, and then it was over a legal matter that he was going about with, and I said, "You're doing it wrong," and he was shouting at me, and I knew in that moment he wasn't going to listen. So I let him shout, and he said, "Listen to me," and I said, "Oh, yeah," and I listened to him, and I said, "Now, can you give me a couple of minutes?" No. And he hung up on me. So what was my response to that? I typed him a little email. If you do it this way, you'll get this result. This is a better way to do it. And he come back, and I typed him up a letter that he could send, an email that he could send. Just cut and paste this and send it to them. And 10 minutes later, I just got back, thanks. So he'd calmed down.
Yeah.
He'd calmed down and he could see my logic. And I said, if you do it this way, this is the outcome you'll get. You're looking for this outcome, you're going about it the wrong way. And it was his choice. He could do it or not. And obviously he'd calmed down and saw my logic and went, thanks, which is probably all I get out of him. But I know him, he's my brother. So pragmatic approach, I think. I'm just a crusty old bastard that can't be bothered with a lot of pissing around. So here it is.
Sure. Yeah, pragmatic approach. It sounds as though you walked as far down that particular road as you were willing, and he can take it or leave it from there. It sounds like, yeah.
All right, well, exactly. I had the thought in my mind. I put the thought on paper to stop myself thinking about it and said, here it is. Take it or leave it. He chose to take it because he'd calmed down a bit, but trying to talk him through it wasn't getting me anywhere. So you just come in a different approach. It's all about responding rather than reacting. You react to somebody that says, I'm disappointed in you. If you turn around and say, well, what premise did you reach that conclusion? How are you disappointed? It puts them back to explaining it and you understand them better. Well, sorry, you've misunderstood. Or there's a couple of facts you're not aware of. You engage them in the solution.
That's beautifully said. My biggest challenge, and I want to ask men here too. Thank you for starting us off. I appreciate it. My biggest challenge is when, let's say, my woman looks like this, especially, and there seems to be nothing I can really do in that moment to make it any better. In fact, trying harder to do something or to sway her to my side or for her to understand has always backfired and blown up in my face. All right. And that's part of what this work is to, like you just said, to respond and not react in fear, not react in family expectations, cultural expectations. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, if my woman looked like that, it's not my job to fix her. She can, in a way, she's expressing through body language she's not happy. You're making the assumption that you're to blame when it's her response towards a reaction that it is. She's maybe not happy with herself. So you wait for her to, you maybe acknowledge it. You don't seem in a good place, and then you leave it. You don't try and fix her because in fixing her, you're going to make a judgment.
That's a great point. That's a great point too. Yeah. With our topic today of if she's disappointed, can I still bring myself into my own joy? What's your mind come up with when you see a woman in this spot, or maybe it's your woman? Come on in, please.
Yeah. Well, I've never been, this is a weak point in my entire life, which is why I'm on the call. I think for me, I would be tempted to go in there and try to rescue her or solve her problems. But I understand, that that is probably not what she needs. I guess I would definitely want to feel empathy for her, and I would want to try to comfort her. But I think, made a lot of good points too. You can't assume it's about you. It could be about anything. So I don't know. I guess I would reach out, try to comfort her and show her some empathy, but I wouldn't exactly try to absorb all her problems and make them mine. And if she was upset about me, I suppose, my past of being the hummingbird and flitting all around and doing all that shit doesn't work. So I think for me, I struggle with the whole let's be detached and outcome independent. But I think in the past, what I have just basically done is just like totally detached,
Yeah.
Totally just went too far and just detached. And, that for me is backfired and didn't work. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, certainly. So what would you rather do now if you could write the script of how you would handle that situation instead of just totally detaching? What would you do now?
I would have, I guess, shown some more empathy and offered comfort instead of just feeling like, well, I'm outcome independent, and I
Right.
get that, but not to detach,
Do you have a
you know.
moment of fear, or because I have this moment of like, oh, I need to fix it, like
Totally.
that, this really stifling feeling for at least a short amount of time. And certainly this was much worse before I began this work myself, right? But do you have that moment, or is your knee jerk just to break away?
Oh, no, I think that I absolutely had that moment. And then as I kind of started this journey, I think for me, I misinterpreted a lot of the outcome independent and I ended up detaching more than I should have, if that makes sense.
Right, sir. Sure, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
took it too far. I took it too far. I was like, oh, I'm doing to do my own thing and I'm going to live from the inside out and I'm going to do these things and I'm going to work on me and she's miserable, but that's not my problem. And so I'm just going to focus on me and never showed her, even though I felt it inside of me. And I wrote about it in my journal about having empathy and not detaching. But that's, I think, in reality, what I did.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Are you open to tell us a little bit more about your current spot? Where are you within your own self, within your journey, or with your woman? Where would you say?
I'm in the early stages of a divorce after 20 years. Um, she moved out probably, and we never even spoke. She just moved out and never haven't seen her until I got the divorce papers. My son stayed here for a number of months. He's 18. And when I got the papers for the last divorce hearing, I read about it in the papers um, that my son wasn't happy with me and that he was estranged with me and that he was going to be moving out with her that weekend. When I came home that night, he was gone, no note, haven't seen him since. And yeah, so I don't, they're all gone.
Wow, how long has that been?
Oh, probably 3 weeks, maybe 4.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a torturous situation. Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else that you want to put on the table? You look familiar. I'm not sure. Have we talked before?
I've seen you on the Good Guys.
Okay, gotcha. So do you have a particular other question for your case, or is there any in your spot, I mean, or is there anything else you want to put on the table with us? And it's just, okay, they just surprised moved out 3 weeks ago. It's estranged. Like this must be just racking you.
Um, I've I've never been lower than this in my entire life,
Yeah.
and I'm a classic nice guy. And I think that the two worst things you could do to me would be to disapprove of me and then to be alone.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone, at least with us here, of course. That's why you're here. And I'm so sorry that you're going through this. It's incredibly
Yeah,
painful. Yeah.
it was a lot my doing.
Mm. How so? How would you say?
Insecure, um, needed her to validate my feelings when she didn't and refused. I would try to bargain, plead, do whatever. That never worked. The years piled by, no intimacy, no physical sex, nothing for probably 16 of the 20-year marriage. And I'd say at about year 8 mark, I just freaking gave up, you know? And I mean, we would get along and we would be civil, but there'd be lots of times where she'd walk by and, you know, just this passive aggressive, you know,
Yeah.
she didn't approve of me. I didn't approve of her. And it just boiled down into contempt.
Do you feel like you've grieved at all for this loss of especially intimacy, closeness with her? Have you grieved about that over the past 16 years, past 8 years?
Probably not. I don't know. Probably not. And we'd go fine. We'd be, you know, we'd just kind of roommates, right? Yeah, housemates. And then I'd have a victim puke every 4 or 5 years, right? Then I'd spend the next 6 months trying to get out of the doghouse, and then I'd bury it and go for another few years.
Yeah.
The last part, I think the final straw was I just got controlling with the money.
Oh, I see. What do you want for yourself? Let's say it's a year from now, 2 years from now. If you can think about that now, what do you want for yourself in the future here?
I don't know. Peace of mind and no anxiety.
Sure. So calmness, direction, clarity, the opposite of those things, right? The opposite of anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're in the right place. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. When you see a woman, and maybe you can relate deeply to this, when your wife is potentially closed down, she's disappointed in you. She's disappointed. How would you now steer the ship of your own joy in that spot?
Yeah, I had previously approached it the way just described, by detaching for the last year, like I've told you guys before, where I just pulled back completely. I got so sick of it all, and I thought that was the best approach. I think that has actually, for good or for worse, has given me a little bit of flavor, knowing that I can do that. It's not ideal now. I know it's not the best approach, but it's helped me a little bit find courage in that when I do stand my ground. Let's say it's something that I believe I did correctly, or others that I'm not to blame, that I actually have the ability to let it ride off of me. So I guess it depends on two things. Do I feel that I've done something wrong? And in that case, I need to kind of step up quickly and apologize if I agree, and not let it burden me afterwards. And then if I feel like I haven't done something wrong, that's where, having a backbone, I think, is, I'm growing that backbone more and more over the last year, and certainly over the last couple months, using some of the breathing techniques, and just trying to keep it simple, keep my mouth shut. And I like to use the phrase, I'm saying no because I have a bigger yes in mind. So if I feel like I'm making a decision, like I'm going out with my buddies tonight, this is the date I planned, I know you're disappointed, but this is for me. It's something I've been planning on, and it means something to me. So I'm saying no to you. He has a bigger yes in mind right now.
That's really well said. I love that. No with a bigger yes in mind. We sometimes have to face what seems like a lose-lose situation as a, let's say, king or steward of our lives, right? I appreciate that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks. Good to see you. Come on in. How do you face the challenge of a woman being disappointed with you? How do you still steer yourself to joy? What would you say?
I don't know if I have a good answer for that, because I haven't really had a woman disappointed in me in quite some time.
Yeah. Can you remember a time ever?
I mean, sure.
Okay.
But I'm, and part of the reason that I haven't had one disappointed me in a long time is because, well, I probably didn't handle it too well back when I did have one disappointed in me frequently. So, yeah, no, I didn't handle it worth a flip back then. And the bad, I guess, thing is I haven't had a lot of practice lately, so I'm sure I'm probably going to have to screw it up a few times before I can zero in on the right.
Sure. Well, I want to ask you about your current spot, but maybe that's a topic for another call in particular. But when you can think back to when she was disappointed in you, how did you handle it? Were you more avoidant, like me, where you're trying to fix it in the moment?
Oh, I mean, all of those things, right? I mean, obviously trying to fix it ASAP, because, that's for me, that's what I do is I can't stand a problem to be OCD or something, but I can't stand a problem to just be out there unsolved. It's got to
Mm.
get solved, and not, later. It needs to be solved right now. And so that's a tough one. And even kind of in the latter part of our relationship, once I kind of knew better than to try to do that. And I mean, I kind of got better at it pretty quick. Once you realize that that's just bad behavior or wrong behavior, it's not that hard to change it. At least I didn't think that particular part was. But previously, I guess if I couldn't fix the problem, then I'd definitely avoid it as
Mm.
long as possible. And that actually probably was maybe even worse than trying to fix it, because avoiding it meant that it just would come back around eventually. It would kind of go away for a little while and then come back, and then go away and come back. And I think that happened maybe a lot of times over some number of years, until finally it just got so big that she was done.
Mm.
So I think the avoiding is really not productive at all.
Mm.
But I guess there's a fine line between avoiding and just um, I mean, shutting down, moving away. Defensiveness was definitely one of it. Trying to deflect or say, well, but you do this or you do that. And trying to balance it out with some other thing. Yeah, it was all wrong. So
Yeah, I hear you, and I've definitely been there. I like to think of if my child was sick or I had an animal that was sick, I would still care that my son was sick, but I wouldn't take responsibility for his sickness per se. And I would know that I could do the best that I could to try to help him, but I couldn't fix it immediately. That's such a different perspective than the woman in front of me is upset and I think I can say the magical words. Or it was more like desperation back in the day. Desperation of I'm being called to the principal's office, and
yeah, that resonates for
yeah,
sure.
that kind of a thing. I was doing research earlier and I actually used this excerpt with a one-on-one client earlier. This is my Kindle version of Mark Manson's book Models, and I was speaking with the client about emotional connection. And this is a particular chapter. I don't recall, but I searched emotional connection. Developing an emotional connection with a woman. So briefly, the more or less the blueprint of seduction is a man who is strong, has high status, he's attractive, he's fearless, he's able to open up and share his vulnerable side with her. And what does that mean? Women get weak in the knees for this shit, he says. It's not even conscious most of the time for them. All that's required is a certain level of emotional self-awareness and vulnerability in your interactions. Just flippantly, all that's required is, so he goes on to say, how do you develop deep and lasting emotional connections with women? Connections that will blow your mind and blow your heart away as well, and hers too. Okay, here we go. The pattern: becoming aware of your own emotions, motivations, and life story, taking the lead by sharing those emotions, motivations, and life story first. Sharing creates trust and encourages her to open up and share herself in return. Ideally, the more this goes on, the more personal the stories become and the deeper the emotions are by which you connect. Okay. Now, in this book, he's talking about new relationships, huge difference. But the tenets of knowing your emotions, knowing your motivations, and knowing your quote life story. So I would say life story is, where do I want to head in my life? What's the adventure that I'm voluntarily taking on? Excuse me. And knowing my emotions around that. So when my woman was upset, knowing what my motivations are. Okay, if my motivation is to never have anyone around me be upset, I would have realized that that's impossible. But that knee jerk, probably from my childhood, probably from whatever, my nice guy training, wherever I got that, was no, you can never have a woman be upset with you. Well, what's the motivation for that? Where did that come from? And what emotions am I really sharing? So even reading a book like this, which is teaching how to create emotional connections, they say, know your emotions, know your motivations, and know your life story. Hell, that's taken a lot of work. That took me many, many months of journaling, coaching, men's groups. Right? And now even when I teach this now, many, many years later, and hundreds of men that I've worked with later, still being aware of my emotions in the moment, my motivations, and my life story is not an easy thing. What do you want to practice with a woman? I suppose I'm asking the question from the beginning of when you jumped in. So what do you want with a woman right now? Maybe you don't want anything with a woman right now.
Yeah, I really, I kind of feel like right now I'm not really fit to be dating, and so I kind of quit. Um, I kind of think that I wanted to take a step back and maybe explore, maybe revisit some of the material and stuff. I just right now, I was having a real hard time making time for it, and I kind of decided that maybe realized that if I'm having such a hard time making time for dating, maybe I don't really want to. And so, I mean, that's kind of where I am now. And it's funny, once I kind of just paused all the apps and all that stuff, my stress level dropped a notch or two. And um, I, I just came back from a week-long trip with some guys to fly in Utah, and
Nice.
it was kind of, it was a pretty good trip. I didn't really have a lot to worry about, and work's still kind of stressful. It's starting to maybe, work is no better than it was last time we talked, when it was like a shit show. But my attitude towards it, I think, has changed a little bit. I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be a shit show for a while. I can deal with that, and it's still making money. So, what the hell? I can choose not to be. I could choose to lower the, just to not, to ratchet down the anxiety a little bit about it, and kind of, and so that's what I've kind of been working on, the ratcheting down the anxiety with that a little bit. And dating and stuff was probably just a little bit too much going on with the other stuff. It's I'm getting kind of to the point where maybe I'll revisit, I think, but that's kind of where it is right now. So no, so you're exactly correct. I'm just not particularly interested right now.
Sure. Well, real quick, I think I can relate to, and many men can relate to. We're not interested in trying to start something new, especially with women, if our business or our money is not right. That's really tough. I mean, I put all my right. This is why a lot of us got into this spot. We were in a relationship. We put all our time and energy into our money or our business, because that feels like the lifeblood. But that's a bit of a different, but I want to call out. So it's a problem in your business that you can't immediately fix. And now you're faced with dealing with the anxiety of that problem that the issue is not immediately fixed. So how are you reducing your anxiety around that? What are you doing, or what's your mindset change?
It's kind of returning to the basics, the monkey mind, observing mind basics, and deciding that maybe the anxiety is just not really serving me that well. And it's not exactly super easy. I mean, right before I went on the trip, I kind of just decided to put it all away, and I had, it was pretty good. And it's funny, like it's a little weird. You have to kind of wonder about the universe, or whatever you want to call it, this time, because my clients and everything kind of just left me alone for the most of that week, which is really unusual. So I was able to kind of just, relax, and I didn't really even have that. I took some things. I was going to knock out a couple hours of work a day or something like that while I was there, and I didn't really even have that much to do, as it turned out, because the afternoon's too windy. It's a little bit of a dead time for flying, and so, but when I got back, of course, it all kind of hit me again, and I was like, oh shit, I'm all worked up over it again. And that was about a week ago, and I've kind of calmed back down and gotten my mind back on track a little bit with a more considered approach to the whole thing and so forth. So it's really kind of almost a mind over mind. I say mind over matter, not matter, mind over mind. It's funny how you can change your mindset by just deciding to. Sometimes it doesn't stick for very long, but you can just decide to again, and then maybe I'll eventually make a habit of it. I don't really know, but I'm in a pretty good place right this minute about it.
Yeah, that's well said. This is for you and for me and for everyone. What I'm about to say is the practice of consciousness is not you make a decision, you try something once and you're this enlightened guru for the rest of time. That's not how it works. The practice of seeing yourself from a higher level, like you're saying, mind over mind, zooming out and seeing yourself, that's like a muscle. That's a practice. And so as you recognize, okay, I'm not in the spot where I want to be, I'm in the middle of the monkey mind, zooming out and seeing yourself is the practice that strengthens that over time. And that sounds like what you're doing. It's well said.
Sometimes it'll last for a few days, sometimes it'll last for a few weeks. And it's kind of hard. It's funny because you find at some point you might find yourself back in the weeds and you forget, well, shit, just a week ago, I decided I wasn't going to do this anymore. And I was feeling, a whole different. And you just forget that whole thing and you muddle through it for a couple of days. I was like, oh, damn, I forgot all about that. I could just change my mindset. But, so, you're right. It's a total ongoing practice and you kind of slip and that sort of thing. And so, like I said, I'm getting mad. I've picked a couple of books from my past, Manson's books and stuff like that. And, dating essentials, that sort of thing. And I figured I'm going to run through those again before I decide to. But I've been kind of just enjoying not having that level of even this low level stress. I do get invited. The friends of mine, insist on putting me in situations where there's other women around and stuff like that, and I enjoy that. I talk to them and stuff like that, and and then I get into that anxiety of, okay, should I be doing something? Should I be getting a number? Should I be doing something? And you know what I mean? I don't particularly like that kind of pressure.
Right. Well, first order of business is just chatting them up, right? Without trying to get anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and right. And, that's not exactly a strength after 30 some years.
That's why I chuckled a little bit when I said that, because I understand it. You and I.
No, but like I said, the monkey mind jumps in even in those situations, says, are you doing this right? Are you, and like, just shut up, just shut up.
Yeah, just shut up and be in the moment and enjoy yourself. Yeah. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. And press pause. Thanks for raising your hand. Go for it.
Hey guys, yeah, great segue into what I was about to talk about, which was awareness compared to let's say where I was maybe a year ago or 2 years ago when this whole thing started. And for guys that don't know, I'm currently tail end of a divorce situation. Started off in-house separation and out-of-house separation, and kind of developed from there. And yeah, I feel like having that awareness of, like, for instance, our daughter was not feeling well. She had to take these prescriptions, medication to snuff it out. And the last day, I forgot to give it to her. I just didn't do it. We just had a busy day, didn't do it. And I get a call from her, the next day, and it was like, you forgot. She's like, just going to town, like just finding something to complain about. It's like, things are relatively civil and cordial here, and the kids are doing okay. And, but she had to just go on this whole thing. Now, in the past, I would allowed that to suck me in and been like, kind of gone tit for tat, toe to toe with that, and been like, well, screw you. I forgot I'm a human being too. I was just done that whole thing.
Right.
But I just let her do it. And then after she was done, like 2 or 3 minute tirade, I was like, you done? She's like,
oh.
And then she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'll bring it to her school. She'll have it before noon. It was just, that's it. Simple, calm,
man,
collected.
Look at you, man. I'm proud of you. Hell yeah. If I could fist bump, I would. Nice. Yeah.
And I gotta say, after I hung up, it felt weird. Like, I felt like, this is a new place. This is weird. This felt, it was like didn't feel normal, because I'd spent my whole life being so emotionally reactive and so tying my emotional temperature to other things and other people externally, whether it was my parents or spouses or girlfriends or whatever. And to not have that and to be independent of that is like quite freeing, it really is. And there's some getting used to it, and there was another time where she, we're handing off the kids, and I was giving her like, hey, by the way, our daughter, she's kind of in a crabby mood and blah, blah, blah. And I was about to go into, I think it's this. She cuts me off. I know my daughter. You don't have to tell me about my daughter. And I was like, all right, slammed the door, walked away. And I was, you know, it wasn't like a slam and like a, you know, it was maybe cut her off a little bit. Maybe it was a little bit leaning towards obnoxious, but in the past, I would have just been drawn into a whole, you know, shouting match, you know,
Right,
where I was like,
right,
all right,
yeah.
cool. I walked away, walked down to back to my place. It didn't care, you know, and that was, you know, I guess my question would be is, you know, is that normal, or is that, you know, am I being a little bit too indifferent or too standoffish? How do you adjust this behavior, you know, comparatively with a ex co-parent or ex-wife with a slash co-parent versus a spouse or partner? You know, is there a gauge by which this adjusts? You know, like maybe I wouldn't have been as harsh if that was a spouse. I wouldn't have been like, all right, bye, slam door, walk away. Maybe I would have heard it out more, you know. But in this case, I was like, I don't need to listen to this. You know,
Sure,
I don't
yeah,
know.
that's a great question. So let's go at it a couple different ways. Number one, first of all, you know, we know each other fairly well. If y'all have known, for you to not be drawn into a argument or a match with her is
Yeah.
fucking phenomenal, dude. So high five, like holy shit,
Thank you.
that's incredibly good. I can relate to when I started this work. I started my personal work 15 years ago when I was about 30 years old. Okay. And I've been doing men's work for, let's say, since 2015. So it's at 8 years, or more than 8 years now. And when I first started this work, I had no awareness of how shitty my facial expressions looked, how kind of judgmental I was of the other person's value system.
Totally that.
You know,
Such
I would,
intense looks, right? It like scares
yeah.
people, you know, and you're like,
Well, I mean, I thought I was confused. I was confused, but it looked like I was just pissed off, you know,
yes,
judging, and I was, so it was horror. It was like starting in a really bad spot. I would
so
even
relate to that.
you know, even a coworker at work, when they had a different opinion, I would literally unconsciously step toward them 3 feet or so, you know, 2 feet, and then say my piece again, just basically kind of intimidation, which I wasn't even realizing. So, okay, the whole deal.
Yeah.
My family used to yell at each other when I was a kid and all this stuff.
Yep.
So
Same.
my point with all of that is I know what it's like to reel in step by step our shitty behaviors. And I'm talking about myself, our shitty behaviors. You know, a day later, I would recognize that I was an asshole yesterday, and then an hour later, and then 5 minutes later, and then 5 seconds later, and then, okay, my face looks like hell, and I recognize it before I speak. And right, all the way back to the point of recognizing what my body felt like before I did all that stuff. So I want to praise you for recognizing it, reeling it in, all this kind of thing. So that's great. For your question, there's no, I don't think, perfect answer on, okay, what's the metric on what's your concern that you're not patient enough, or you should handle this in a different way, or what? If you could say the question again for me.
Like a lot of our conversations here are talking about how to find that place, like you said, of patience, or less emotional activity, or less tying of emotional temperature to the spouse or to the partner romantic partner. I'm just wondering, how does that change or shift, or does it change at all with someone who is a co-parent with you, who is an ex? And there can be baggage, and there can be things that are existing there, and things that we're working through. And you know, I'm not looking to be her friend. I want to be friendly with her, with each other, for the sake of the children, and to have a healthy co-parenting relationship for the next 10, 12 years. But you know, that's where it stops. I don't want to hang out with her. I don't want to, you know, braid each other's hair and talk about, you know, size of dicks she sucked. I don't need to hear any of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh, holy shit. I don't want that either. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me answer your question in let's think of it as a triangle. And I'm going to show you a graphic here in a second of something similar. Let's think of it as a triangle. At the top of the triangle is us being an enlightened man, a mature man that handles it with patience and reverence and empathy, like all the things that we would hope that we aspire to and practice. Okay. Let's say that's at the top.
Yeah.
And at the bottom, one side is you handle it poorly by collapsing or wishing that she would take you back, so you do everything a nice guy would do to try to appease her and just fucking, you know, pedestalize her. And on the other side of the bottom of the pyramid is the other, where you are explosive and you call her a bitch and you tell her to fuck off and she doesn't know how to be a mother. Okay, so there's really three kind of options there. And this relates to king, warrior, magician, lover. And this is a graphic from Robert Moore's book from the same name, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And what I just described is what this graphic is, but it's within the four masculine archetypes, the four Jungian archetypes. And so if I use your example of, I'll just say the king is, of course, overseeing, a nurturer for those in his kingdom, so to speak. And so whether the woman is your spouse or your co-parent, sure, yes, of course, she's playing a different role in your life. But if your goal is to aspire to this patient, calm, clear, empathetic, you know, mountain lion of a man, it, quote unquote, doesn't matter whether she's your spouse or your co-parent. Now, of course, if she's your co-parent and you're bowing down to her hoping she takes you back, that's not great. Or if you're bowing down to her when she's your spouse, that's not good either. But so it depends on how you are looking at. Now, when I'm with a woman, I care. When she's my co-parent, I kind of don't give a fuck, for me. Now, I care because she's my son's mother, but
Right, exactly. Yeah.
as I've been describing throughout this call, when she's my spouse, I have a whole different set of unconscious and then now more conscious bias, habits, right? Whereas if she's my co-parent, it's a completely different story with me. That might be different with other men. Maybe they didn't have such a contentious spousal relationship, so it's very similar to co-parenting. Or maybe they're still trying to chase her down and cross their fingers, and you know, she's, as you so eloquently put, sucking other dicks, and they still want her back. Well, that's a different spot.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in having her back. So that's let's say the best answer I could give is that, what's the man we're aspiring to be? And if we're not doing well, we're either usually collapsing or exploding. And so for every man that's listening to this, it's identifying where you are really within those habits, and then as best we can in any particular one moment, right? So avoidant would be more of a collapsing, or let's say self-righteousness, where you're exploding, but you're just out of eyesight. Okay. Or if you're in her face, those are two ends of the, what is it called here within King, Warrior, Magician, Lover? The collapsing king is called the weakling, and the exploding king is called the tyrant. Or let's say in lover terms, if you're exploding, you have to have her, that's more of an addict. Or if you're just like nice guy, kind of weakling, it's more of an impotence. Yeah. So that's how I would answer that question. That's a great question, then.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think that it makes a lot of sense, and there's my edge, you know, to find that place of like overall care and peace and whatnot, and not really have too much concern of what the relationship is.
Right. And let me give you one. Yeah,
I'm not there. Definitely not there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Yeah.
Let me give you one kind of a life hack that I've used. Is this has taken a lot of practice, but I will say, I'll literally look away. I'll literally break eye contact, because if I'm locked in eye contact, it's really hard. I'm kind of on a roll then, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll look away, and I have this practice of saying to myself, or out loud, and allowing the escalation of my body 10 or 20 seconds to subside. Because it takes about 20 seconds. When you're in fight or flight, cortisol rushes into your frontal lobe. And it takes about 20 seconds, give or take, depending on the research you look at, for your body to realize you're really not in a fight or flight situation. And it takes 20 seconds because there is really no danger. It's a habitual or family pattern. So and looking away, I practice giving myself 10 or 20 seconds before I really do anything. And that's been hard in the face of my teenagers, where I began to first practice this, in the face of my son's mom now, which has been many years, and her flippant, abrasive, responses to me, or her avoidant responses to me. I really had to take that time. So we say react versus respond. To me, I have to give myself a 20-second pause to allow my body physically to be able to even have a chance of being that mountain lion man that I'm wanting to be. Yeah. And it seems weird when you're standing in front of especially a child or a teenager or someone that's not used to you standing there for 20 seconds and doing nothing. Basically, they're going to press you like, why aren't you talking? Answer me, all that stuff. And you really got to tell them, like, hold on, let me think about it, and just give yourself enough time. It seems like forever when you're in the middle of it, but it's really not. And you teach the other person pretty quickly that, dad is going to stand there for 30 seconds before he talks with me about it. My son learned that pretty quick as a teenager.
Yeah, no, this is definitely all applicable to my relationship with my kids for sure. And,
Good stuff.
greatly improved the emotional reactivity there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks.